tirar os escombros, tirar os pedaços de pedra.
As rescue workers scrambled to provide assistance to hundreds of thousands of people after the Haiti 12th of January earthquake, Earth observation satellites were helping international rescue agencies. The views of the situation on the ground were provided by the International Charter on Space and Major Disasters, combining the resources of the European Space Agency and some 20 partners, national space agencies and Earth observation organizations. It required but a phone call to the control rooms at ESA's Frascati Earth Observation Center near Rome to activate the charter and to provide a unified system of space data acquisition. Over the following days and weeks, optical and radar data were collected by ESA's Envisat and ERS-2 satellites, France's Spot 5, German, Italian, Canadian, United States, Japanese, South Korean and Chinese spacecraft. Often working 24/7, remote sensing specialists then processed the raw data into meaningful maps and analyses, regularly updating them and relying on years of archived reference data. This added value visualization from space of the Haitian catastrophe allowed relief agencies to decide their priorities, focusing rescue efforts in the most devastated areas, coordinating medical assistance and incoming aid to the stricken population. Since its creation in 2000 at the initiative of ESA and of the French space agency CNES, the Charter has been activated on many occasions. Initially, it was being invoked about once a month. Now it is more like once a week. Over the last 10 years, it has been triggered some 300 times for natural or man-caused disasters. Earthquakes in China's Sichuan province, at Aquila in central Italy, in Kashmir, and more recently, of course, in Chile. Satellites have also helped for tsunamis in Asia, cyclones in the Pacific, volcanoes, landslides and floods, forest fires, oil spills, and even potential catastrophes, such as the eventual collapse of a dam in Ukraine. The Space and Major Disasters Charter has amply proved itself, yet it is still an ad hoc mechanism. Can it be improved? Perhaps it could give rise to an international organization that would address not just emergencies, but also respond to actual and potential disasters with end-to-end services, in which, of course, satellites would still have a leading role.
We have a rather loose definition of a major catastrophe, which is any catastrophe, any disaster which leads to a loss of human life or to a major damage to infrastructure and property. It's a little loose, the definition, but we felt it was important that we tried to draw a rather conservative line between those events which we could really justify invoking these rather expensive and resource-intensive assets for, and more minor activities which, if we were to invoke too frequently the Charter, I think its effectiveness would be lost. So it's important that we can only invoke it a reasonably few number of times, increasingly frequently these days, in fact. Initially it was invoked around once a month, something like that. Now it's more like once a week. And over the last 10 years we have had some 300 activations of the Charter. The Charter activations lie at the top priority of our acquisition. So if there are conflicts for acquisition and different acquisitions which are attempted at the same time, clearly one has to set a priority. And the priority for us is, number one, is to activate the Charter. Then after comes our commercial and scientific and other aspirations for the data. So there is a significant pool of resources now available through the different agencies worldwide to provide data for the Charter. SPOT is an example of a commercial data supplier, but activated and operated on behalf of the Charter via CNES, the French space agency. So CNES offers data from the SPOT system as part of its collaboration within the Charter. We have a wide range of different suppliers now coming from, for example, in the UK we now have the DMC constellation, which is an entirely commercial driven activity, but nevertheless one which is prepared to make available for the Charter data on a short-term basis very rapidly around the time of disasters. There's no doubt that it's operated in good faith, in a good spirit, for humanitarian benefit, and I think it's a very good model for cooperation between, in this case, space agencies, which could be extended to other types of agency worldwide. It's a very nice model for international cooperation. It's done on a mutual benefit. Of course, also many of the events which we support, or disasters which we try and help support the relief agencies in, don't occur within one of our member states of the Charter. So we have organizations like the EC and the EU, and more importantly perhaps the United Nations, which have agencies which operate worldwide. Also, so things like the Red Cross organizations, and in Germany the Red Kreuz, which have a responsibility worldwide, and so we're not restricted only to operations of the Charter in the 10 member countries which have signed up to it, and many of our activations occur in developing countries or in remote areas where the national capacity for access to space is limited. For me, the Charter was born of necessity. It would be, I think, a mark of success of the Charter if it disappeared. If there were sufficient cooperation which were taking place through international frameworks where we had no need to invent ad hoc mechanisms like the Charter, which works extremely well and is still very active and increasingly called, but it really was created specifically to answer a failing, an inability of agencies to be able to cooperate quickly in response to a disaster. That was the key thing about the Charter. It wasn't to provide long-term data sets and therefore perhaps compete as a mechanism with the supply of data from other sources. It was simply a mechanism to ensure that those who needed data quickly around the time of a disaster they were not prevented from access by administration, by not knowing who to call, by financial aspects. We provide very simply one telephone number for somebody 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's the only number that the agency needs to call. The key to the Charter is its simplicity. We've tried to ensure that we don't complicate it by trying to extend its operation in time, by trying to use it for managing other types of events. Keep it simple. It works to do what it does. The numbers of agencies which now participate in the Charter has increased. We have more agencies who would like to join and offer their data in a very generous way. They get, in some cases, very little out of it. They simply provide data, and sometimes these countries have very few disasters at home, but they're very happy to provide their data overseas. So maybe a success story would be that we even phase ourselves out and the world is cooperating more effectively in general and we don't need the Charter, but until that time I hope that we are able to continue to be as successful as we have been.
Well, from here we can actually monitor the position of our satellites in real time. We can also see when the satellites are acquiring data and when they're transmitting the data back to the stations. In particular, we can see our Earth observation satellites, ENVISAT and ERS-2. And here at ESA we have our mission planning officer who coordinate all the activities for ENVISAT for the International Charter.